Seaside is located in Seaside, Florida. The Seaside Community Development Corporation was formed in 1979, but construction did not begin until 1982. Seaside represented an important step in historical development because it took architecture design to an even larger scale, a city. Duany and Plater-Zyberk changed the way we viewed traditional urban groupings by creating a decent environment for human habitation once again. Then many different architects designed the buildings that made up Seaside, but what they also did was create a code that all designers had to design their buildings by. The code implemented the town design in 3 dimensions, ensuring that its streets and squares are spatially defined and that the assignment of building types is respected during build-out, which may well succeed the lifetime of the designers. This was a way to keep the buildings cohesive while making them unique to each designer. This reminds me about what Scruton said about cities. The orders should be understood not as geometrical systems, but as systems of significant boundaries. Boundaries marked by shadow. While all had to follow a certain set of codes, the fact that they were all designed by different architects made them inherently different. Each architect approached each problem and set of rules a different way, making each building similar, yet separate entities. The plan also concentrates commercial activities in town centers and distributes civic spaces and buildings throughout the neighborhood to contribute their character and focus. By concentrating shops and workspaces into certain areas, Duany and Plater-Zyberk were able to make similar groupings of buildings that established certain places for shopping, business, gathering, and living. They further wanted to make a public realm through the definition of space. Duany and Plater-Zyberk were able to break away from the idea of a suburb and make Seaside a place with an identity and a place of community. The feeling of community is furthered by the plan. The plan was made to be equal to all inhabitants by making sure Seaside residents all see and share their beach. Although they had not designed with a certain inhabitant in mind, they designed Seaside to allow people to become a community and create an identity for themselves. If Seaside had no public spaces and started a suburb, people would not be encouraged to get to know one another. The plan of Seaside is already an established place where one can situate ourselves in and make sense of the world spatially. Duany and Plater-Zyberk also made it that the layout of the street reflects both the character of the land and the designer's efforts to make a memorable network that will accept future growth in an orderly manner. The plan often follows the pattern typical of American towns, a geometrically defined center, radiates an interconnected street network which adapts to existing conditions. Scruton would also most likely not agree with Duany and Plater-Zyberk's design because Seaside was built with the intention of expanding but not outlasting the purpose for which it was constructed. Although Seaside could further expand to become a bigger community, it is most likely that Seaside will not be able to change to something completely different because of the code. The shops and the people may continue to change the identity, but I think it will be hard for Seaside to move away from being a community of houses and shops. While building materials were required to be pre-World War I, these materials only required builders and designers to build and design the buildings as a more stable and carefully crafted house, because they could not use modern building materials. Duany and Plater-Zyberk expressed no concern about how their buildings and building processes would affect the environment. The code did not establish how much material they could use or establish some guidelines that would allow buildings to better receive light and circulation without technology. No one could say for sure if Seaside is a sustainable structure or not. But because the issue was never addressed by the architects or the inhabitants, it is highly likely that these structures are going to have a large impact on the environment. While there are still many suburbs in America today, Seaside is a perfect example of how to prevent living communities from becoming very similar entities with no identity. I hope that people will learn from Duany and Plater-Zyberk's design and create more communities like Seaside to emphasize common spaces that are connected but different building designs. Ugh.